Lukey. Great show for everyone today. It's all about dead food consumption and, what's going on with that. Of course, everybody's consuming, of course, things which is cooked, and a long time ago they realised that you can't give cooked food to the animals in the zoo. And so they had to give it, all of it, with its enzymes. You couldn't be found baking it and then giving it to, rabbits or frying stuff up, and then giving that to other animals. So that practice all stopped because before that there was a lot of food just being given to the animals, and it was all pelletized and cooked up and what have you. I mean, they saw they didn't survive whatsoever. Anyway, the animals and vets can sometimes really have a better understanding, perhaps. Consuming food, though, that's packed and surrounded in plastic, have you ever thought about that? When you melt the metal off a can, do you see all the plastic there left? So it's people just drinking out of plastic. And aren't those things endocrine disruptive compound? And isn't that just, God, gee, I'm not sure, lining all the packaging, the Teflon pan, Teflon sheets, and it's all used for drying and, moving food around so it doesn't get stuck, what have you, where the food industry is in highly processed food. So could that be dangerous? Because when you wash food with EDTA and then you freeze it and stuff, has it got the same value? No, it doesn't. It's really disastrous, matter of fact. It would have had an element that could have caused you to have proper blood-borne inhibitor, but where's that in that cooked, dead, skeletonized food? And called supplement out there too, because it's not even food, okay? Doesn't have a nutritive value on the label. And so how about you could look into this, because you can see that a lot of packaged food really raises the levels of xenoestrogens in your body. And you're not going to tell me that most of these chemicals don't break down to sort of strange estrogenic properties on the membrane of your cell and water. And so food which is contaminated already and processed has got fungal estrogens, you see, mycotoxin. That's the excrement of life colloid, which is really non-ecological. So you've got mycotoxin like zearanolone, and all conditions of a hyperactive attention deficit disorder and cognitive conditions and things. All it is because you've got mycotoxin metabolite in the tissue around the brain and meninges and things, you see, and pancreas. So it's excessive, strange estrogens. It's really the most dangerous type of steroid. And it's produced by mold in the intestine, you see, contaminated there where agricultural product is, you could see it. And it's really like excessive processed, refined cereal and dead food carbohydrate and cooked, animal flesh consumed. And it's just like, what's up the chain there above all of that, And it's eventual. What you're fed, you see, and what this beloved is really being fed. So could you see how xenoestrogens, for instance, could have been entering your blood and your whole body, and this being a new toxin like mycotoxin is, and all of that coming about because you had a lot of sediment that was just deposited in the body and you really didn't have a tight junction fit? And couldn't you just to get to the bottom of a lot of things? Because why go through lots of testing? Why not just do something which is time-worn and clears a lot of this stuff up? And how come you haven't looked at the blood? So liver issues really are responsible for a capacity of your ability to break these hormones down where they're no longer needed. And especially where new toxin is, that's not needed. And so you've got a liver functioning that can become impaired, and cystic fibrotic types of conditions where neoplasm is, that's just sticky mucus, in spaces. That's all that means, okay. So, the the ileum and the large intestine, where your appendix is and things, and above this where the pancreas is, all become kind of impaired, and some inflammation is often there where you press in a little. And so the pancreas really is noted, and a disorder could be where that can include certainly, usually, various sorts of things like thyroid metabolic disorder and cognitive types of impairment. And why is that all of a sudden just clears up? Because you do a little bit of methylation and hydrolysis. Have some honey and lemon. So dead food without any enzymes, all of it's cooked out, it's enzyme resistant, it's coagulated, it doesn't have a three-dimensional structure anymore, it's hydrophobic. And so you're not going to tell me that, a house could be built out of material that lasts 1,000 years versus just, 30 years. And so Jubb cell rejuvenation really targets all of that, to remove all of that toxin and help you restore the nutritive value where you have, and a focus on the hygiene of your blood. And can't you see that this is properly eliminating all of that excessive estrogenics, those xenoestrogens, causing people to have male pattern baldness, for instance, and all sorts of things, you see. So endocrine disruptedness starts in the gut. You've got to gut the mind to mind the gut. And you have to consider personal care, where product is, and this sort of thing. You've got propylparabens, and you've got phthalate, and common sorts of cosmetic sort of lotion, shampoo, fragrance types of molecule and things, which is synthetic. Absorbed through your skin, gets into your body, and it's not meant to be there, just like Teflon. So the body's toxicity and the process to be able to clear those things down can be not too good. So you certainly shouldn't add any more toxin, period. It's not going to be worthwhile, trust me. So the plastics where by Svenel sort of BPA is, you could find this, yes? You find it in the tissue, this extracellular matrix. You're going to tell me that it doesn't impact mood and the tissue, where it's full of these phthalate, microplastic from containers and plastic bottles, and leaching all of that into food, and how hot was the beverage when it went in, and what have you, and how much looseness was there as gases of all this material that just goes into the food. And mind you, you only have to have a tiny little bit in the environment, and then frogs are not born properly, you see. And we know a bull should probably have, glands for milk. This doesn't maybe make sense, really. But abundance really of xenoestrogens where the body is, primarily due to just the daily exposure of all those frogs in the synthetic chemicals mimicking estrogens and this endocrine disruptive type of compounds. It's not life colloid degradable. It's just stored in your fat. And it's just, don't you think it's actually built up over time? Have people just used all of these detergents and synthetic benzoaldehyde types of molecules and stuff, just roaring off what you washed, and you're drinking it. You can smell it. So this high estrogen stimulates prolactin levels, and estrogen where pregnancy is, and it stimulates the pituitary gland ever more for all of us to produce more prolactin. And this prolactin level leads us ever more to a lower estrogen, and so it's sort of like up and down, swinging, and it stimulates like spasms of things where the body is more not to respond like properly. So creating reciprocal torture relation, it should be, and you shouldn't really be having excessive prolactin that comes about from these xenoestrogens that interfere where hormone and ovulation is, for instance, and male pattern baldness. So it's irregular. And it's like, what's been missed? You see, what's reduced as far as fertility is concerned. And it's really symptomatic where flashes are and dry mouth and dryness more is of the body and bone loss is. And so you've got definitely usually where the diet is, you've got all these galactorrhea types of molecules as stimulatory sorts of impact where prolactin is on the thyroid, hypothyroidism ending up. Why? Because if dead food begets dead. Doesn't have any zeta potential in it whatsoever, but could be prepared to make it easy to digest as part of what life food is. Life begets life and dead beget dead. Might you look into that? So otherwise, like a hypers or a prolactemia in conditions where the body produces high levels of hormone like prolactin and xenoestrogen's not broken down properly, and then you've got drugs as toxin, antipsychotic, antidepressants, and opioid, and all of those things that all increase prolactin. Plus, they rob histamine. And so now, can you have proper thinking after that? Not really. But could you just, if you had some lemon and honey? Yes. So the primary concern really where selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors are, and a class of antidepressants and medications and things like that are generally antihistamine, and that is not recommended for anybody who has cystic fibrosis. No. Because you have to heal this up, and now you're going to heal everything else. So drugs which is associated to the risk of bone loss otherwise and fractures, and the exact mechanism that's complex is not properly understood by anybody who's prescribing those things typically. Should be. So serotonin, you've got 5-hydroxytryptamine. It's really the best known neurotransmitter and critical where the central nervous system is to develop and function. 95% of that serotonin is made in the intestine. So it's increasing, recognized. It's a hormonal, autocrine, paracrine sort of endocrine action, and problems would arise if these natural processes weren't overwhelmed by outside agents, you see. So it's certain, of course, right? Medication, toxin, illicit substance, supplement, which is not nutrition, all lead to serotonin syndrome. What are you going to tell me that it doesn't? You'd have to deny that it doesn't. Dead food doesn't do that. So symptoms range where people start to get little mild tremors, they get diarrhea, they get severe life-threatening kind of high fevers and seizures and delirium and coma, and whenever they do, magnetic resonance imaging and things, and they use these toxic heavy metals, it all starts to coat things one after each other. And is that cleared away? No. You have to have a look. Did you have a look to see if it's cleared away? Why not? Well, that's really bad. How come nobody stopped to look to see if whatever was done before was cleared away? Was it just showing up the same as it was just about? Oh, my God. It's still in the tissue. So was it worth it to have that? What did it show? Certain it didn't help you heal up. Could have given you the runs and diarrhea after that. Okay, so symptoms of mild tremors and diarrhea and severe life-threatening sort of high fever types of seizure and delirium and coma could have been. And it's serious toxic induced because you do not have the right process, approach. Primarily, asbestos preserve your central nervous system. So if you want to have a really long life, shouldn't you have a balance between serotonin and dopamine? You know about an axis about this, and your bone cells themselves, osteoblasts, the osteoclast, the osteocyte, all of this produces and regulates serotonin. So, you've got this biofeedback condition going on, and you've got this paracrine and autocrine system where the bone is able to have its remodeledness And you've got this serotonin transporter that manages local serotonin uptake, you see, and xenoestrogen impairs that. So circulating synthetic serotonins all bind to these 5-HT1B sort of receptor in osteoblast. It's shown such. So what about bone-forming cells after that? Uh-oh. So xenoestrogen's really circulating and serotonin or synthetic. Don't tell me that they don't get stuck where receptors are and can't get broken down. And what about osteoblast and bone-forming cells after that? So do you get little holes in your bone called your osteoporosis and osteopenia? Circulating synthetic estrogens like these serotonins and these 5-HT1B sort of receptor, osteoblast and other cell where calcium is, it's really a transformable condition that's supposed to work but not, where you've got excessive xenoestrogen and you've got lung producing all the red blood corpuscle and the intestine as well. And the vast majority of serotonin where the body uses, 95% is produced more by these endochromaffin cells where the gut is. And the endocrine signaling where skeleton is, it's really the influence also by what you've got going on where life food is and things. Do you have leptin and kinetin and things that, regulate your appetite? Or you've got appetite-regulated hormone, which is acting more on the brainstem serotonergically and decreasing serotonin production and its release and demonstrating sort of, you've really got a physiological connection between energy and these serotonin reuptake inhibitors that should be being consumed and it kind of had nothing to do with neurotransmitters at all except for, metabolism. And if you focused on that, do you have enough glucagon, for instance? Okay. Well, what's important where signaling is in the body and your sense of balance and coordination and your help where things are, and mood, and where balance is, can you have this with cell rejuvenation, of course, and whole brain patterning? You're looking at decreasing all the risk of bone loss and fracture, certainly. You're looking at decreasing conditions of serotonin out of balance where bone loss is. And you're looking at what's noted, of course, these selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which are being given to people, increase bone loss. And it's really due to the change of balance, in particular long-term. So serotonin really is a harmful sort of substance long-term. It's not supposed to be used, sort of things like that, where other drugs are similar, like fluoxetine, for instance, is an antidepressant, and premature bone loss can be shown where that could have caused some excessive exposure where serotonin is associated where prolactin is. And so estrogens really increase serotonin, and systematically you've got serotonin in turn increasing the production of estrogen. So it gets out of control, you see. And the result is fully adjusted sort of regressed type of analysis, which confirms you've got to have a higher risk of fracture if you do those things than non-users. And you're in increased risk of a lot of things. So thyrotropic releasing hormone and all of these things are shown to be not in a proper stead. So neoplastic just means any tissue beyond the economy of the body that's supposed to be there that's grown. It sort of is really going on where the meninges of the brain could be, where vessels supplying the brain, reducing blood flow, where that could have been, isn't a proper approach, is it? No, it's not. You'd have to increase blood flow and you'd have to reduce the neoplasm in that circumstance and improve the symptoms straight away. But how can you if you don't have any microminerals? So the condition that exists to talk really is the subject of xenoestrogen, of course, and hormone disruption that we've been talking a little about. Excessive prolactin and production of that primarily caused because of neoplastic cells where the pituitary is called prolactinemia. So it's really affected, it's inferred that dopamine's inhibitory effect, where emotional cognitive toxin is from a drug, and also you could have had sort of compressed types of pituitary stalk where pressure is from hypertrophy of tissue because of hypercapnic, not being a nose breather. So disease could have been impacting the capacity to detox, and it could have inhibited the ability to clear up hypothyroidism and the stress where that would have been physiological types of condition where dopamine function is, and laziness and then procrastination can have been. So it's not for you to be considering that you shouldn't, but should be correcting the things, of course, and you're really considering looking at the blood under the microscope. Why not? It's a link between xenoestrogen and prolactin. You can see it. It's the foreign chemicals that mimic the effect of that natural estrogen disrupting endocrine system, and it's shown. The xenoestrogen stimulate the pituitary gland to increase prolactin secretion, like we're talking about, and so suddenly you've got lower secretions of other things that should be. So disruptive estrogen balance, not where something is not. You've got conditions that shows up where you've got male pattern baldness for him, testosterone not broken down to estrogen properly, where generic expression is not broken down. So it stops the vitality where the hair follicle is. So xenoestrogen's really getting out of hand where they do disrupt the calcium channels, and it's challenging. It's really an exact effect. Xenoestrogen and prolactin all depend on concentratedness, where it's inhibiting. Of course, prolactin releases is a radical alteredness, of proper body function, because it inhibits the liver from being able to break things down properly itself. So chronically elevated prolactin levels really suppress production of gonadotropic hormone, in turn levels of estrogen where women and men have testosterone, so it can cause like a freeze on the nerves that's supplied to erogenous zones. And so you're talking about cleaning up the life colloid terrain, and at some point we could get to talk a bit more about what that is. But to describe the challenge that's going on, it's really excessive endocrine disruption, like what we've talked about. But what does Jubb cell rejuvenation do? It gives you more albumin to heal up. So looking at strange dissipatedness where what is resultantness of low estrogen and low testosterone and disrupted sort of bone modeling and that sort of thing, and fractures, these are the things that's very common in the modern world. So live food, of course, turns all of that around. It balances the calcium in your body. Otherwise, you're really noting a bigger picture where xenoestrogens have found their cause from dead food. So keep in mind, sticky mucus really is what gives you the ability to be able to not handle calcium and sodium and bicarb, right? That's right. So it's things are excreted to the outside of the cylinder, and it becomes sticky. So magnesium, if it was there, which is generally not, it would help keep those calcium channels shut, but it's not there. So excitotoxicity of the nerve cell is, and it's like really wiping cells out. So endothelial tissue, which is the cells that line the passageways, really depend upon this calcium channel, and cystic fibrosis, epigenetic conditions that sort of like less than allow that to happen as well as what it should. And that's the reason why, people like this cannot get any heavy metals at all. Okay. So live food diet really is certain, and one on a diet like that could really have vitality. Otherwise, have you heard about the bacon and eggs and all of that sort of thing in the morning and everything eating during the day, which is raising somatostatin and blocking and stopping digestion? On a dead food, protein complex carbs meal, more estrogen and fat in the meal, eating more than once a day, somatostatin releases and slows everything down, and you've just got dead food consumption, excessive toxin, and chronic elevated prolactins. And so prolactin suppresses all the production of gonadotropic releasing hormone and things. And so xenoestrogens really have a direct effect. Dead begets dead, and life begets life. Why don't you leave all of that xenoestrogen behind? So excessive dead food intake leads to all sorts of conditions, every single one. And nobody's going to say that the condition that you have is not because of consumption and what you've been given iatrogenically. Okay, so gut life colloid and your insulin and glucagon function all contribute to have a proper balance, which you could learn more about with other podcasts. So dead food really, as a carbitarian or a starchaholic, as a vegan is, or a dead food eater, everybody just there is seeing sort of or more aromatase sort of activation, and that's not really good because it's an inflammatory mediator of cytokine like TNFA sort of alpha and prostaglandins and things which really are released by fat cells surrounding where immune cells are, and these compounds all create body promoted activity of aromatase enzyme and further increasing estrogen production. That's not good. So gut life colloid disruptedness is absolutely necessary to have hyperactive attention deficit disorder or multiple sclerosis or, what's called Lyme's or anything. You see, you have to have a life colloid disruption in your intestine to have the symptoms of those things. So the terrain, which is really would have been specific to supporting lazy couch potato life colloid, and the noted composition of the life colloid where your intestine is, and looking at the effect of this on your red blood corpuscle, an actual ingredient, why aren't you looking at your live blood cell analysis? Why not? Why haven't you seen, that red blood corpuscle can transmutate into an immune cell? You see, so that's what is happening. Estrogens otherwise, and reabsorption of these beta-glucuronidase reactivate sort of estrogens bound for excretion, but can't because they're just going to get reabsorbed because the bloodstream and liver and pancreas is loaded with stones. Can't empty. How about cleaning those out? So the gut contains a collectedness of life colloid, and you've got these estrobolome types of unhealthy gut life colloid bacteria, which produce enzymes like these beta-glucuronidase enzymes, which, you've really got fungemia, which is not bacteria. So just chill about all these antibiotics because that's not going to affect a fungemia, a fungal infected condition of the bloodstream and the tissue of the brain, which we're talking about. So low-lying cystic fibrosis and undiagnosed or not diagnosed neoplastic sorts of conditions of the meninges and life-threatening sorts of other types of conditions really is fungi that's from the blood and spread to other parts of the body, including the brain, and the meningitis and abscesses and pancreatitis all are part of a fungal infection of a couple of critters, and that metabolite that always can be found in the regions of the meninges and the pancreas. So blood culture, where diagnostic tests are, identify fungi, and the treatment, which really depends the type of severity where the infection could be. It's a long course of Jubb cell rejuvenation, but quick, smart, you see this get all cleared up. See, live blood cell analysis really should be done because you could see fungus in your blood and you could see the condition of ferment in the blood. I mean, you're not going to tell me that's not going to be affecting your brain. So candida and the bloodstream infection needs nitrogen, it needs nitrogen, it needs protein. Can you have it without it? Protein? No. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. Candida needs protein. It needs nitrogen to grow. So does fungus. So does mold. Okay. So it's estimated like really low ball, maybe 25,000 candida people just get to be sort of seen a little bit. But it's really high rates where death is, and it's a mild fungus in the yeast where the blood is. And has anybody seen anybody's blood that's clean? I don't think that's very common. Look, the blood should be clean, and this is scientific. All other testing is just not properly whatsoever of any import. You need to look at the blood. So the pH of the blood and what's your mouth breath and mild fungus or yeast where the blood is, and the Jubb cell rejuvenation is a target to clear all of this up, you see. So a fungal infectedness where invasive aspergillus is, you've got mortality rate and infections caused by, the tissue breaking down into Candida auris and sediment breaking down into this, and flesh, which is millions per square centimetre under a microscope. And what have you got on the leaf? 70? 3 or 4 or 5? It's just... It's extraordinary the amount of life colloid bacteria that you've got in flesh. All right. So drug-resistant sort of funguses and deadly healthcare setting and infectedness where caused cryptococcuses is coming from your own body breaking down. You don't have to have caught that anywhere. And so it's normal blood that contains these microbial life colloidal toxin called mycotoxin, and it's observed in live blood cell analysis. Why haven't you had a look at your blood? I think it's quite unscientific that you haven't seen your blood, and I think it's laughable, all right? You've got contaminant where skin is and all sorts of equipment that's around you. How has that all gone on? And a systematic toxification where it's certain that reputable conditions like these life colloid vesicule, where it's seen in live blood cell analysis as synthetic types of life colloid, which we could go on and have another bit of a show about, but the protein aggregates, which is non-living organism relative that you could appreciate, where you're looking at the cells in the red blood corpuscle, and a fermentive life colloid terrain. You're going to see candida in the blood. You're going to see fungus. You're going to see it in the blood. What are you going to say, that some test you had to go do to find that or something? It's like, please, just look at a tiny little drop of your blood. So it's common, and it's common in the bloodstream. And don't tell me that somebody doesn't have that, because have you heard life begets life? Okay. So it's estimated that it's a really small number of people. It's like 25,000 or more like occur. That's like low ball, but it's not so. It's just depend on the statistic, which is so biased. Candida always is associated with high rates of death. Plasma, the liquid part of your blood, really shouldn't contain anything except the proper component. It shouldn't have undigested protein and cholesterol particle and issues where digestion is and nutrient absorption and detoxification, which you see by looking at your blood. So platelets that are small and irregular shape. You could look and see the behavior of those and the potential for that sort of to have caused blood clot and things. The red blood corpuscle has an appearance that indicates sort of how immune function is and what's the different types of lymphocyte and monocyte and all the distinct sort of nuclei where they are. So you're looking easily at a red blood corpuscle under the microscope, and I have to tell you, Google is wrong. It's so bad. Google is not scientific because you do not have red blood cells. And so we have to beg to differ a lot and go beyond what's just quite dumb, matter of fact, that's said where Google is. Because the red blood corpuscle is made up at a double spore in life, colloid and transmutation. So it's a huge error where the design, could that be just purposeful because it's only got commercial information and business for the sake of not science. So it's really a red blood corpuscle that's not in a good life colloid terrain. Okay, so it's going to break down into ferment. So the red blood corpuscle really is not a cell, doesn't have a nucleus. Could you show me how basically wrong most everybody is, where they're just calling it a cell when it's not? And so favouring all the statistics that COVID would be a very good example of fraud fully, and all the drug companies where you've got a criminal banking cartel of a one world order system just paying for that misinformation. So it's abundant where the cells are, and as practitioners, the appearance of accessiveness to oxygen delivery. And that must be because you have to have carbon. If your cells have carbon, you can get some oxygen because it can give carbon to hemoglobin, and then it will give you oxygen. Otherwise it goes, no, I'm not going to. So blood clumping and agglutination, who's going to say that's not cystic fibrosis? So it's a normal process that's dangerous where you could have some condition that's totally unchecked and it's little oxygenation, it's not proper negative redox, you don't have a proper condition of parts per hydrogen, it's supposed to be vital. The blood clots where clumping is and blood hardens into a liquid solid more, and it's a living life colloid, gibberellin that grows a vine around the red blood corpuscle. These are living organisms. Got to think about that. Your body is made up like Mexico City is, Uber everywhere. Okay, so the block, looking down at the blood where you've got a flow in the course of your heart, and then, otherwise dead begets dead. You've got attacks, you've got stroke, you've got pulmonary embolisms, you've got clumping, you've got antibodies, you've got red blood corpuscle clumped. You've got the determinists that diagnose certain, poor terrain and certain tissue that if your guts are being bridged, your brain has definitely got metabolite right there in the tissue. It's just going to function good if you clear it away. Yes, it does. Okay. So examining the quality of the shape of the movement of the red blood corpuscle and the immune cell where life colloid is in spore and double spore, they're supposed to be in the blood, and you've got platelet. Okay, you're looking at an exact condition of the blood, otherwise you're not. You don't have enough albumin. You've got a lot of fibrin globulin. So it's a monopolized media. It's not getting the truth to you. It is not transparent. And it's really COVID, which was really the reverse in Hebrew of the word divok. So it's the silent sound of a barrel where the 10 angstrom sort of wide chasm is that closes up to form a 9-carbon barrel, and you're looking at magnetron structure in a membrane. And life colloid and micro-etching sort of reflecting light and making composite image, which looking at really good healthy blood. And the nutrient isn't deficient like B1. It isn't. You don't have coenzyme Q10, you do. You're not missing K2 and iron. You're, not need to have to run your mitochondria. It's running. So it's coercive violence and weaponized institutions. It's just targeted, beloved, where this kill box is, where the lack of knowledge is. You don't really think that that's covert itself. It's very covert. So how do you continue looking where absolute lying is going on, and who's put forward any claim to show? No, it hasn't. So ignorance targets victims, of course, and you've got coercive controllers and corporate doctors in the system, and constitutional, supposed to be, but did anybody ever read that? Coherence where controllers are, where law enforcement is, and voluntary supervision, and where the UN is, and CB system is, it caused most people to become just a victim and of no right proper, and it's something abridged where that is. So it's for and on the record where you've got no clean blood since 2020, basically, and synthetic lipid bilayers are showing up where these vesicles are. And is that what biowarfare is? You see, it's a slave where a name is, and that's not right, and not anybody's but except a privilege granted, and you're under some latched contract, which you're not. But the true born parasite where ferment is, and colloid, and blood, and it's candida and the colloid life cycle, and you've got a differentiation and a de-differentiation of the red blood corpuscle. It can have gone into a fat cell, and the fat cell can reverse differentiate it back into a red blood corpuscle. And it can have become anything where the terrain only can have allowed it as well. So multiple sclerosis and attention deficit hyperactive disorder and these sorts of things, you're really looking at fungus in the life colloid mat or film that all the cells are surrounded by. And so that's the topic of another podcast. But yet you're looking at how the dead food turns off the immune system, and it can't function after that much. And it's just debris and new toxin and neoplastic condition and extremely unfit terrain. You've got to change the terrain. So it's diagnosed that a proper approach should be where diagnosis is of your blood and the discovery of what nutrient conditions that you have or don't, and artifact, it's science that's supposed to be trained. You've got a medical laboratory scientist and a bias that's encouraged people to not look at your living blood. So proper live cell analysis and dead stained technique don't and not equivalent to each other. A contaminant that's common where microscopes are, and common in stained dead cell technique. So it's really, rusting, rotting, and fermenting, and the tissue breaking down into non-ecological life colloid pleomorphing. And you're hearing what a bias is where things are out there, not knowing about any of this. The life colloid organelle that's existing in the blood, it's simple mechanics in its moment, where a serious sort of bias is about all of that. So modern medicine really is keeping people amused while nature takes its course, and it's really not considering the consumption of dead food, not resting the pancreas like you're supposed to during the day by only eating once a day. So aspergillus is really put where invasive life colloid is, and it's caused as a toxin that, you're looking at fermenting, it not cleared up, goes to pleomorph, aspergillus sort of species where it can be seen in the blood. So you're going to have metabolite in your brain. The brain is going to become compromised because of it. So is an antibiotic going to help build that up? No. Probably going to make it worse because it's not a fungicide. So clearing up compromised immune system, the immune complex really should be broken down, you see, and this is something which we focus on, use to get your blood clean, all right? So it could really lead to otherwise a fungemia of the brain and organ and blood vessel. And so stop fermentation and stop getting the DNA turned off. Get life begets life and bring ubiquitin life colloid in, which help DNA, and it switches off the aerobic glycolysis and switches back on oxidative metabolism instead, which you're supposed to have. Now you don't have all these lactic acid types of product which ferments, and that's really not good for your terrain. So xenoestrogens ferment and life colloid type sort of mycotoxin, and that causes neoplasm to be more increased, makes extraneous water between the cells and not enough hydration more in the cells like progesterone does. Which helps. So it starts to shrink and cause neoplastic addition, the cells do, and so suddenly, it triggers a neoplastic cell rapid repair response, and this is what neoplasm is. So an excessive methionine and glutathione, excessive phosphates, that's in dead food, flesh and bean, no real calcium much there. It is going to cause a fermentive, poor terrain. It is called a mucus diet. So keep in mind the body really breaks down itself and it reverses itself, aggregates, fuses, differentiate into these non-ecological life colloid when the terrain really isn't proper. And do you know what every tissue of the body would break down into? Why not? If you're going to be in forensics, you should. So teaching proper condition, you've really got life colloid, and it's part of a life colloid cycle. So Jubb Cell Rejuvenation with Atlantic books, pick up a copy. Secrets of an Alkaline Body, another book. Bibles, pick up a copy. Start gaining ever more science behind what's missing. Yeah. From the health movement at the moment in recovery. But you're starting to see a lot more information about this, aren't you? So xenoestrogens and fluid retention, really a foreign substance there the body is. It mimics the effects of the body's own estrogen, and estrogen really is known to cause fluid retention. And what's cystic fibrosis do? Fluid retention. It means you've got extraneous fluid between the cells, and honest to God, they're not going to be able to be respired properly where that is. So the mechanism of xenoestrogens acting really like your own estrogen, and we're supposed to, most males and females have estrogen and testosterone, and otherwise you've got water retention. You see you've got bloat, you've got swelling of your ankles, your fluid volume is excess, it shows straight away, you have extracellular fluid after various tests you did. It's like you've got cystic fibrosis if that's the case. So the mechanism of estrogen, strange, and the contribution of bloatedness and swelling, where the extracellular volume is, it's really what happens where excessive estrogen is imbalanced by progesterone, natural, the natural diuretic effect of progesterone. So it's mild diuretic where effect is, and increases the loss of sodium and water from the kidneys. Otherwise, you're looking at counteracting all that fluid and estrogenics, and you're looking into adopting a life food nutritional fastings. You're looking at looking into a 42-day life food nutritional cleanse. You're looking at having methylation and hydrolysis, which you could pay attention to this by listening to the other podcast on honey and lemon. So counteracting estrogens, which you can do like this, like we're just starting to talk about, is reducing all that dead food that can't be broken down properly. It acidifies the body as an antioxidant. It's really just not the idea that you've got to have something like progesterone. It's going to cause your water to be drawn more inside your cell. So you have intracellular balance and extracellular fluid. And it's in a balanced relationship. So if you're looking at things in a balance, progesterone and pregnenolone, and these are things which should come from aldosterone and things that you have that you can break down into, which is all enzymatically active, versus you looking at something which is resistant and it's not the same at all. So dead food eaten, where health is, that's not going to help. I'm sorry. Look into live food. It's probably the most amazing thing you and we should do. And it's incredible. So we started our show. We really just said, hey, you know, dead begets dead, life begets life. Consume live food. Get rid of all that consumed food packaged substance, all right? It's very disrupting compound. Leave flesh and bean and heavy protein behind, because that's exactly what, you know, neoplasm needs to be fueled up, and stop all the Teflon types of stuff which is going on that, you know, could be in parts per million where your body is, and definitely not having given you a good health. So for me, it was just looking under the microscope and seeing how you could dissolve all of these things. Yes, by having proper blood-borne inhibition. Anyway, Lukey, I think it's a really great show that we've had today. Let's keep going where this topic is, because I think mycotoxin in your terrain, I think that's a good topic to discuss a little bit more. Anyway, I hope you're having a really great day as you've been listening to this show today. And Lukey, let's catch up to each other in a future show, mate. Love you, mate.